Tough to battle when you talk about the Amulet Master writing the Amulet Bible. Facing that down is always very scary.
Yeah, Dom is the Amulet player, led all the innovation, has top forward the most recent, one of the most recent Modern Pro Tours, with the deck, and has been playing it for years and years to success. I was gonna say, we talked about this before. Dom said, "I'm gonna win this all," right? Steven Dykman won it all last year, including Player of the Year, something Dom said he would do, but it ended up failing on there to Garrick. So Dom needs to prove it to Dykman here. Can I beat you so that I can take it all down in the finals?
Yeah, Dom actually fell quite a bit short, ending number 7 on our leaderboard. So, quite a bit lost there, but does still have a chance to win the whole thing here, as you mentioned, he claimed to do. With a great start, but has to get through Steven Dykman, our champion. And I don't know, Expedition Map card I want to highlight real quick. An important piece for doing it. If you're playing against the control deck, your best card, this is one of those matchups that's close enough that you can be tinkered a little bit based on the specific numbers of certain cards. Those cards being Teleria West, Cavern of Souls, and of course, Expedition Map, because you want Cavern of Souls and ways to find it.
Steven Dykman here, making sure he wants to play his mana out this way. Can get a little weird sometimes with this. He's going to go Plains into Prismatic Ending, getting rid of that Expedition Map. He agrees with you. That's one of the more annoying things. This is open deck list, so Dykman knows how many copies of Cavern, etc. Dom is on.
Yeah, love that. I mean, great sequencing there from Dykman, understanding how important that Expedition Map is, and maybe Dom being willing to deploy it might mean he has a backup way to find it. Could be like a sign there, because, Dom obviously no stranger to the control matchup either.
Yep. Spelunking coming down, draw a card. Dom now has an extra land drop he can make. Picked up an amulet. Remember, amulet and Spelunking don't stack together the way that 2 amulets do. So that is a good draw, for a little bit of insurance, but not the best draw in the world.
Yeah, Spelunking, we're in high numbers here anyway as well, because we do have that added combo. You can kind of see signs of that already in Dom's initial lands with the Shifting Woodland. And backup Spelunking does still also have text, giving you that extra land drop like you mentioned.
Yep, Vestige came down there off the Spelunking, naming green. Then we played our Urza Saga for turn, played another Spelunking, and we picked up another Urza Saga. So you might see Dom play the value game. That's one of the things we see from this Titan deck, is its ability to play multiple different game styles. Decides to hold it for right now and instead put Boseiju into the battlefield and just to pass the turn.
Yeah, getting another permanent land in play. Clearly not interested in holding the Boseiju for any kind of tricks. I think that makes a lot of sense. Not a lot of meaningful targets on the other side of the table. Leyline Bindings and stuff like that really absent from the list, which Dom knows. Deck lists are open.
Yeah, that's a great point. In a closed deck list environment, playing Dykman round 1, Dom might just say, I'll play the Saga, right? I got the mana to activate. Let's just sort of do this right now. I might be playing against Leyline Binding. That card's strong enough. I maybe need to respect it a little, right? Knows that's not something we have to do here, as Breeding Pool is grabbed off the Lorien revealed, as Dykman's just going to be making land drops. Land.
Yeah, this is interesting. Dom has a lot of mana already, which is extremely powerful in this matchup. So traditionally in Modern, the story of the big mana decks versus the control decks are you need to assemble enough mana as your big mana deck, which of course Amulet Titan is, assemble enough mana to punch through multiple win attempts in the same turn and overwhelm the counterspells, the mana for counterspells that the control deck has access to. That has gotten a lot harder in recent years with the addition of things like Force Negation, proper counterspell, things like that. We're not working with cryptic commands anymore, but still something that's very possible. And of course, the Amulet Titan, as I mentioned before, having a very expansive access to Cavern of Souls means that you can punch it through much easier by just naming Titan on that and punching your Primeval Titan through that way.
Yep, Dykman has the Fairy Time Ravel in hand. Looks like he's sizing up this one to bounce that Urza Saga as we shock in the Breeding Pool. Also, if Dykman's deck is playing Orm's Chant, so that is a new card it added back to Modern from Modern Horizons 3, and we have Isochron Scepter in our deck as well, Drake. So Dykman does have a lockout potential now. Boseiju can fight over that, and Dom has plenty of bounce land, so that's not a huge.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, you can lock out a lot of what's going on, but also, I mean, a lot of what's going on the other side of the table is just activating the abilities of lands, which does, work. It's one of the few things that works. You can't attack, you can't cast spells, but if you can activate abilities, and there is some stuff you can do with that. And of course, the combo that this new version of Amulet Titan, I say new, I mean, Amulet Titan's been a deck for a long time. This new builds featuring Aftermath Analyst combos alongside Spelunking and things of that nature can actually just keep doing that underneath Orm's Chant, and it might not be a total lock like it is against a deck like Mono Red Storm.
Dom going to play another Urza Saga for turn. Hand just Teleria West and Amulet of Vigor. Going to pass the turn back to Dykman. Dykman going to look to Cosmic Rebirth. Going to target the One Ring, put that back in hand, gain 3 life.
That's not bad. I mean, go ahead and develop. I mean, the One Ring, obviously you don't necessarily want to tap out unless you have a lot of cover. But for the moment, I mean, Dom is content not casting spells. You mentioned, we might just be on the Activate Urza Saga plan. That's kind of what Dom's postured to do right now. And his sequencing of Urza Saga does mean that, A, he's not in a rush to get constructs, but B, he's also going to be able to maximize constructs. So he's going to make Steven Dykman answer that plan first before he starts reaching for other plans.
Minamo comes down, and then I think the One Ring, it gets played, get a protection, pass the turn. Not going to draw right away.
Don't need to. And like I said, I think this is fine because Dykman understands that if Dom tries to do anything big, he's not activating sagas, and Dykman can kind of untap with One Ring and reassess what Dom actually does accomplish. But if all Dom does is activate sagas, you're going to be happy to have gotten your One Ring down early, and plus you might just need to find the answers, now anyway, to those saga tokens.
Yep. As we're going to see activating of the construct here.
Yep. Can go find another one. No more expedition maps. Only one in the deck list. So the only target, I believe, in the main deck other than Amulet of Vigor is that one expedition map. So we do actually have to find an Amulet of Vigor, even though it's textless. We have no other choice. If you want to find anything at all, it has to be Amulet.
Yep, Dom happy to get those out. And like we said, they do stack, right? Our Spelunkings, all we really have is insurance from one spot removal spell, stopping us now with multiple amulets. Since we have one in hand, we are going to get extra untaps. Looks like Dom actually has the 3rd amulet in hand, has to hope to not draw the 4th one there. Otherwise, that saga is just going to brick and can't attack profitably due to the One Ring.
Yeah, cards coming for Dykman start to spell trouble. I mean, this is really, I think, one of the spots where Dykman really wants to be. It kind of looks bad, but we're in the main deck games where I think Dykman has maybe a little bit more creature removal than he more or less wants anyway. And that's why the Saga plan isn't, it's good. Obviously, it gives you a pivot to have in the control matchup, but I don't think it's ideal. Dom looks like he's in a good spot. He's getting a lot of constructs. He's, ahead ostensibly, but I mean, Dykman, if this One Ring gets to stick around and do its thing, he's going to have plenty of answers to stuff, and it looks like he definitely does.
Yeah, and I think Dykman has Wrath the Skies here. We are going to shock in Hollowed Fountain. Looks like we are playing Teferi Time Raveler here. Make it so Dom can't do anything when it comes to casting spells, and Dykman is going to take up the Teferi, meaning,
it's speed. Wrath the Skies for 0. You can clear the tokens in combat, right? That works. That's pretty nasty.
That's really strong there, and might even, catch Dom. Looks like we're going to Orm's Chant. You can't cast spells or attack me this turn. Dykman trying to set up a lock and use the One Ring to completely take over this game. Dom did pick up Aftermath Analyst, and that card is incredibly good at just winning the game out of nowhere with this new deck. Dom does have some ways to win if he can get that card into play through stuff like being unable to attack, but can't cast any spells this turn.
I think there's a lot of pressure on Dom to really read what Dykman is doing here. He understands the deck list. He understands Wrath of the Skies. I don't think you want to deploy this Aftermath Analyst quite yet. You want to make Dykman answer the board, and then you can actually use the Analyst. If you're not comboing, you actually can just get back your sagas and do it all again and fight over that whole thing again. And Dykman, with this Orm's Chant play, is actually setting up to really make Dom make the tokens now. You can't wait any longer. And then get them all with Wrath of the Skies. And so you're not going to take any damage. You get to preserve your life total. You get to get all the tokens. Dom can keep this Aftermath Analyst as the ace in the hole, but it means he can't deploy it this turn. I mean, he could because he has the Shifting Woodland, but, you start to talk about that's not really the way you want to do things, as you just lost 2 lands to the Saga Sacks.
Yep. Dykman's going to untap, take 2, thanks to the One Ring. Picks up a Force Negation for the turn. Going to activate the One Ring. Draw a lot of cards. Flooded Strand, Narset, Plains. Dykman is in sort of a nice spot. And Dom here kept a hand that's very normal for this Amulet Time deck. You're very like well equipped to find a Titan. And sometimes you just keep a hand that's like, yep, I Titan on turn 2 or 3. Like what's my draw going to be? And while still in it, has not been able to put enough pressure on Dykman as he's been able to sort of develop these lock-ish pieces. As we see a Flood Strand for the land for turn, Dykman's going to spend 3 mana. Might be the Wrath of the Skies here, just cleaning up the amulets. Looks like it's going to be the Narset Parter of Veils. And a reminder, Dykman does play 1 Days Undoing. We've seen players do it in Pioneer, and Dykman's doing it here in Modern as well. And with Teferi Tick-Up, we can do that after we've drawn for turn.
Yeah, I think you still want to answer what's on the board first. There's a lot of tokens that are threatening these Planeswalkers that you do want to keep in play. But things are looking very good for Dykman, despite this opposing force. I mean, it can be cleaned up basically at any time. Like I said, Dykman has, I think, a plethora of creature answers in the main deck that he's more than happy to find targets for against Dom. So really the question is, how much setup can I do? And how much can I bait Dom into this Wrath before I have to pull the trigger on it? And then, of course, we can clean up after with all the Planeswalkers and the leftovers from there.
Reminder, the Days Undoing does end the turn. So if we set that up with the Teferi Time Raveler, it is just going to end Dom's turn when we find that.
I thought it was only on your turn.
Oh, excuse me. It's only on your turn. My mistake there. So, but we do have the Wrath of the Skies to clean everything up, but that is going to be a tough spot for Dom if that ends up happening. As Dykman takes up his Teferi, wants to hold that Wrath over top. Also has another Orum Chant picked up.
Yeah, the Orum Chant is so nasty because it continues to make it to where Dom can't do anything with his turn, and Dykman is actually getting more ahead as each turn progresses. He's deploying more Planeswalkers. He's furthering his board to where when the Wrath actually happens, his leftovers are going to be excellent. There's look at Orb's Chant, the very powerful addition to Modern card that already was printed. I don't know the original set. I'd have to look that up, but it's before my time, so I can tell you that. It's old. And it was added to Modern Horizons 3. Wizard said, yeah, that's safe. And then now we're getting Isochron Scepter Orbs Chanted here in 2025. So thanks for that.
Actually, Drake, I said it was safe. I give you
okay. So walk me through that because I have to watch this now. So you have some answering to do, Bucko.
I thought, it's obviously it's a team effort, but I definitely thumbs up the Orange Chant because I thought, what if we get, Chant as a part of Modern, that's not the end of the world. It could, do some powerful stuff for being able to stop aggro decks and combo decks, and we're seeing it here, And you know what? If we get Scepter, that's cool. And if we got Snapcaster Mage, we were winning. We just didn't get the Snapcaster Mage. So
sweet, awesome. Yeah. Well, Dykman thanks you very heartily for your services. Second Orb's Chant's going to work, and Dom thinking about what he can do that matters. Cursing Mason Clark's name.
Yeah. Wait till we get to the Flage matchups. Anyways, growth Teleria West is going to get channeled.
Yeah, the transmute there, it was not trivial to make the mana for this, right? Like I think Dom has really been struggling to find the second blue play, maybe speaking to some of the downsides to the really stretching the mana base that Amulet's done. Has 32 lands and a bunch of them make colorless, and now you're sacking some to Lotus Field. You have all this concessions in your mana base to not just do the Titan combo, but also do this Aftermath combo stuff to where your mana is actually starting to get awkward despite playing 32 lands in what is a mono-colored deck. You're mono green now.
Yeah, and you're seeing Dom take a think here. He's just double checking, making sure. And we are going to get the Summoner's Pact.
Yeah, obviously you can grab any land. So there was a lot of consideration. Do any of the lands do anything meaningful here? Maybe we have the Analyst already. Can we get close to comboing? These are things to think about. Decided, I think, ultimately to just go for the Summoner's Pact. It's a nice, safe card to pick up. Can pick up extra Analyst, but more importantly, the namesake Primeval Titan, more or less at any time. Well, anytime on his turn.
Sorcery speed. That's right.
Yeah. Some conditions. Yeah. Static abilities.
Anywhere you want on a Wednesday if it's sunny outside.
Shout out War of the Spark.
Yeah.
Got Narset and Teferi in play, really shutting down Dom's options. More so Teferi, I think, but the One Ring added to the bunch means, Dykman tapping with the One Ring again here is honestly pretty brutal. The window is really starting to close to the point where Dom, he might be on Cavern or Bust, and now you kind of have to go back to that Expedition map that was kind of just deployed, gave Dykman the target for Prismatic Ending, and now, with that Pact in hand, it's not clear that the Pact would resolve, but if you find any Titans at all, he punches them through, now not clear that that's even going to be good enough anymore either.
Yeah. Dykman Found a land, gonna activate the Narset, see what we have on top. Was feeling like didn't have enough cards. Found another Orbs Chant.
Oh, sweet.
Yeah.
Sweet. Yeah. Green light.
And Dom's gonna pack it up. Dom knows he's dead here. And this is part of the thing too, is like Dom has Summoner's Pact to go find the Titan, but he knows Dykman's playing a pile of Force Negations in his deck. That isn't gonna resolve, and he can tell the writing is on the walls.
Yeah, yesterday I did some commentary alongside Niall in the booth, and she declared Orbs Chant 1 mana, target opponent concedes. Good to see the Orbs Chant returning to form in that regard. Of course, more than safe in Modern, says Mason Clark. With that, I guess we have to take a look at the Titan Masters deck. We've seen it before this weekend. That's because he's done a lot of winning, and we're going to probably see it quite a bit again as we're going to go to the sideboards.
Yeah, Dom sideboard here. 2 Consigned Memories, 2 Dismember, 2 Mystical Dispute, 2 Vampire's Vengeance, a Boseiju, Collector's Oof, Commercial District, Force of Vigor, Gemstone Cavern, Ghost Quarter, and Vexing Bauble. Drake, what do you like here and why?
Well, I mean, the cards that should jump out to you should be the Mystical Disputes, right? These are counter spells that you can fight, not just over the counter magic, but also proactively against some of the other problematic stuff. Talking, of course, about like Teferis and Narsets, trading 1 mana for 2. Going to be a good exchange. I mentioned early in the broadcast that this matchup is a lot about beating the control deck on mana. You are a big mana deck. That's what you have over them. You should be exerting that. So I think that's something that they're going to be reaching for. Beyond that, I think a lot of the other stuff kind of gets to traps. The Gemstone Caverns, when you're on the draw, is good, but Dom lost. He will be on the play. He's not going to be reaching for that one. The card I do like that I think you can bring in just as a slight upgrade is the Commercial District. I think having a Surveil land in this matchup is just nice. That value is going to come up. You have the time for it. You can bring that in. Small adjustment there. But beyond that, really your only cards are those Mystical Disputes and some of the land changes. I don't even really necessarily want to reach for the Consigned to Memories. I don't think there's a lot there. I don't think hitting Scepter, hitting One Ring, that's not really what the matchup's about. But I mean, if he really just wants extra stuff that plays at all, which, that's up to him, I don't think you're going to be reaching for those.
Yeah, all 61 cards in Dom's main deck. I'll have to figure out which ones he wants to cut. Going over to Dykman, let's see what he has. As he has brought this control deck, really trying to attack certain things in the metagame here. Sideboard with 4 Consigned to Memory, 3 Mystical Dispute, 2 Doan Vito, 2 of those Scepters we talked about, 1 Days and Doing, 1 Narset, 1 Wrath of the Skies, and the Companion Kahira.
Yeah, so here, I think you actually do want all the consigns, not just because they trade evenly on mana with your amulets. That's a fine thing to do, but actually hitting triggered abilities can come up really big. Primeval Titan is a triggered ability, and if the amulet deck's plan is to punch it through with Cavern of Souls, then you actually can still stop it on the back half, and then that exchange works much better for you than really any of your other options. So despite being a little bit unintuitive of a card, because they're not a one-ring deck, so why would you want consigned? There's plenty of targets for it, and I think you kind of want it for that reason. Beyond that, you could reach for the Scepter stuff. The Orbs Chance looked great there. I kind of made fun of them a little bit, saying, hey, you have all these land abilities, but as we saw, sometimes that's not good enough because the rest of the stuff the control deck's doing is more than good enough. If you want the Scepters, I think there could be fine because you do want to cut a lot of this creature removal that's in the main deck. You don't need this much. You need a little bit of it, and the endings, of course, we saw those can come up big, hitting some of the artifact stuff, but all of the Wrath of the Skies, the Supreme Verdict, and the Solitudes, you don't need all that. The Solitudes are great, but some of the sorcery speed stuff we can really trim on. So yeah, I can see bringing in Scepters if you have more cuts than just for the memories.
Makes sense. Let's really quickly look at what our players are playing for this weekend as they are still sideboarding here for our game at number 2. There's along the line. We're in the top 4, so we only have to pay attention to the little part of this here. First place gets $10,000 of Pro Tour invite and invite back to next year's champs. That's how Steven Dykman made it back this year. This year he decided to focus more on his streaming career. A lot of you in chat watch his stream every weekday there, and he is trying to get another invite back. But Dom, Theo, Andrew, all fighting for it as well. Second place gets $5,000. Fourth and third place both get 2.5. And we see what our other competitors this weekend all won as well. Thank you to our sponsor, Ultimate Guard, for helping put on coverage this weekend and bring this also paper magic to our players. Let's head to feature match area as Dom is showing us his skill. He put in his player slide. Pile shuffling is my special talent. I want to also make a note. Pile shuffling is not really shuffling by the judges. You still got to do it. It's just more like counting. But Dom is wowing me here. It's really impressive. Birthday boy going off.
Can we talk? Okay, there's multiple problems with this. First of all, the point of pile shuffling is to count. Here we go. We get the player slide too. The point is to count. But first of all, those piles were awful. If you're going to talk about your special talent being pile shuffling, they're all over the place. Cards just flying everywhere. Second of all, he has a 61 card deck. So like it doesn't even like cleanly, if you're going to do the piles, you have to now change the way you're doing it to be divisible by 61, which might be a prime number. I don't know. I'm not a math guy, but this is just a disaster all the way down. A disaster.
I still don't know what a prime number is. It's on a magic card. As we are seeing these players put in their decks here. Worth mentioning here really quick as we see Dom run away for a second. Maybe he's going to talk to his teammates because there were a couple tested teams for this event. We saw Dykman come with Azura's Control. Dom's team, Theo and Andrew Ellenbogen are other players in the top 4. All 3 players on that team have made it to the top 4 of this event, and what a strong showing from them across all of Magic, and showing up here at the NRG Champ Series as well.
Yeah, that's a pretty busted team. If your conversion rate is all 3 of you in the top 4, I mean, you can't draw it up better than that.
Mm-hmm. It's very impressive. You see Dykman sort of looking away here, thinking about, what have I done that I registered Scepter Chant? But also, it's working. I feel like I thought I was going home early. We are going to take a quick look, though, at our 2025 events coming up, because if you enjoy this and want to make it out here, you can win your slot next year. We've announced our first 4 events, February 1st and 2nd. In Chicagoland. You can come on Saturday for a 10K showdown, Sunday team trial 10K. Really quickly, you might be watching these events and you're thinking, what's a showdown? I'm not exactly unique to that vocabulary. Showdown, you win one of those, you go straight to our championship. We have a leaderboard where all of the events across the year will help you qualify. We had players like Connor Mullally qualify via that this year, but we have it there. We saw the rest of those events coming up, but we'll go over those more later as our players are back and ready to battle Dykman's mulliganing. But yeah, if you win one of those, you can make it out, Drake, and we'll be commentating you next year here on the line, as one of these 4 players today is going to be there as well with their invite back.
You're going to be, the Indianapolis team showdown is really cool. I mean, we've seen multiple teams all get to qualify together. Obviously, they have to test together as well. We talked a little bit about Frederick, who, didn't even test on MTGO, just only uses testing partners that he qualified with. That's really cool to see. And, that whole narrative, that experience is really, really special. And I really like that the Energy Series is able to offer that. And of course, that'll be in Indianapolis as the last season, the capstone of season 1. Maybe we should lace up the cleats. What do you think? What are you doing?
I'm down. I was talking about earlier. I've done a lot here on the NRG series, and I was thinking, why not just get there and make them have to find someone new to do commentary? We caught up, and let's be real, Drake. These Zoomers these days, they see cards like Maelstrom Pulse, and they're like, that's like not even close to playable, and they're just wrong.
What is this garbage? Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, so we're gonna clean them up a little bit. We'll have to pull someone out of retirement. We'll see who we can get from the washed days.
Yeah, we got to get. It can't be somebody that's that's just battling and winning. It has to be someone in the rocking chair complaining.
We'll get Harlan here.
Where's Harlan? What's he up to?
I think he's a woodworker these days, as we are going to see some honest work from our Boreal Grazer off the Boseiju into the Urza Saga. A very fast start here from Dom Harvey. Lots of mana, can play the fair game, but also threatening to kill on turn 3 with an amulet.
Massive flavor loss. You have these sloths enabling fast starts. What are we doing here?
Urza's Cave, a pass of the turn after Dykman just played Misty Rainforest. This is another Modern Horizons 3 card. You can search your deck for a land.
Any lands. Part of the combo too. I mean, this is one of those things that lets you dig through your deck. If you don't have any of the kind of draw or anything else going on, you can go find the lands you need to continue the combo as you are comboing with your Aftermath Analyst, because you do keep bringing your lands back from the graveyard. You make a bunch of mana, but then you need something to do with it. And so the Urza's Cave is one of those outlets that can do things like find the Boseiju, blow up all the lands, and all these kinds of things that are now available that are, like I said, pretty new to this Amulet Titan deck, but add a lot of potency to it. There have been spots in the past where old builds of Amulet that didn't have this, over the top of everything, win the game on the spot, infinite combo, could get in spots where multiple Titans isn't even good enough anymore. And it's rare, but it came up.
Dykman likes what's on top with the Surveil, keeps it there, draw for the turn. It's going to line up exactly what we want to do this turn. Dom is threatening to start making constructs, and it looks like Dykman's just going to go land go here. Dom, make a construct, untap. This is a turn where we can either make another construct or potentially threaten to put an amulet, a Titan into play after we maybe search for an amulet. Has a couple reactive cards in hand. That's taking a second here. Do I want to play this longer, grindier game, or do I want to go in for a kill? Looks like there's no Titans, but might be thinking about having a colored mana.
Magic.
Yeah, I can sign Mystical Dispute, another Saga, and a Bounce Land all in hand here for Dom.
I'm interested to see the consigns. I assume those have to be going after things like the One Ring, Scepter, stuff like that. I figure you could bring some in, but I'm interested to see how many of those Dom's interested in. Does have a lot of, like I said, a lot of interactions. So, I mean, really, we could be in a spot now where we just find an artifact, try to find blue mana, lay some beatdowns, and just kind of do what we did game one, but this time with some counter magic backup. That changes the equation quite a bit.
Yeah, I have to agree. And I feel like Dom as well with this sort of, setup, he can play that tempo game, which I think Dykman's deck isn't really prepared for. So there aren't really decks like that in Modern right now, right? Clock plus Disruption is just something we don't see in that way with counter magic. And that could be a very powerful angle for Dom to lean on. We'll have to see what he wants to do here. It looks like he's deciding between, that Amulet of Vigor and this one of Expedition map, maybe wanting to find a specific land for any problems at hand here.
And this is a spot too where the construct plan, despite it not really working in game one, I mean, he had two sagas, got all the constructs from them, and was just kind of dunked on by Dykman. It gets better in the sideboard where Dykman is incentivized, because that doesn't happen all the time, to remove some of his creature removal. And so the plan of beat you down with the constructs and have that be good enough does get a little bit easier. And so Dom being able to lean on it, and like I said, this time with counter magic, I like it a lot more. I like it a lot more here than what we saw in game one.
Yep. We are going to see Dykman go fetching. I wonder if Dom here is setting up potentially to use Urza's Cave as a way to find a blue land for his counter magic, because we are missing the blue right now. Like you mentioned, the deck is basically mono green in the main deck, and so doesn't have a ton of those other colored sources. Has 30-something lands in the deck depending on where you're at post board, but it is a spot where it's definitely not a free roll like you might see from most modern decks that have their two colors ready to go. Dykman sees the One Ring, puts in the graveyard, says, "I don't need a card like that."
Yes, I mean, doesn't need it, needs lands. That makes sense to me. And I don't know. This is, I don't even know that One Ring is necessary. It's one of those cards you keep in your deck because it's one of your best outs to, there's a Titan in play. I don't have an answer. What do I do? And so that's an important piece of the puzzle for buying time against Primeval Titan. And part of the reason the Aftermath Analyst stuff is so good is you can actually accomplish things that win the game, but don't win the game, even under One Ring protection. So that is something that is quite nice. In this spot, Dykman, of course, leaves them in, but I don't think they're the best cards that he has. And he already has one in hand. I mean, he has a lot actually already in hand. Lands, Consign, I see an Orange Chant, Wrath of Skies, Narset. I mean, his hand looks great.
Yeah, and you have to wonder here, too, if he just goes land, Wrath, what would happen? And I think that's what he might be thinking about. It's like, if I just blow up all these constructs in this amulet, can Dom actually do anything to punish me in like a real way? Obviously, I'm tapping out or whatever. But like, is there anything I'm actually scared of? And that's one of the hard parts of playing against this amulet deck is they can do some crazy stuff. But if you're not used to it, it can sometimes, maybe lead you down the wrong path. You think nothing can happen, then Dom shows you why he won a Pro Tour top 8 match with no lands in play at the start of the turn.
Yeah, that's this deck, especially when Mycosynth Gardens got added to copy Amulets. There was a lot more of that going on. This build doesn't lean on that as much. Like I said, you got to make room somewhere. That's the way to do it. So there's a little bit less of the winning with no lands and play stuff going on. And I like this play from Dykman a lot. A lot of the ways that Dom punishes you is stuff he probably would have already kind of done anyway. If you had, it involves like amulet, okay, Civic Growth Chamber, now what? Those are the kinds of plays that you would be making. And if Dom had access to that, you would have been dead turn 1, 2, or whatever. So what can Dom accomplish on this turn with the shields down?
Through the One Ring.
Like One Ring? That's pretty good. Oh, that's a fine consolation prize. Yeah,
it looks like there's something he's thinking of that I'm pretty interested. I wish I could talk to him right now and know what it is. Might be thinking about Force Negation, how bad would this be if that happened, but gets the One Ring down, gets protection, going to draw a card immediately. Got an Otawara. There's the blue mana we were looking for to have our Mystical Dispute and can sign up.
I already played a land, can't deploy it right away. Had to play Urza's Saga to get that going. But now we actually, like you said, we have blue mana and can afford to activate Saga and keep the blue mana up. So that's a good spot, but it gives Dykman a window, and he's going to use that window.
One Ring comes down, draw a card immediately here for Steven Dykman. Wants to have access to all of his tools. Dom's going to take one, take up his Saga, and see what he can do. Theo has defeated Andrew Ellenbogen 2-0 and advances to our finals. Theo, I don't even know if he's dropped a game this weekend. We'll see what he can do in the finals against Dom or Dykman here, as Dom would love to meet his teammate in the finals and have that bragging rights if we came to crush it. Dykman really wants to get invited back next year, really wants to back-to-back it. I believe would be our first ever NRG back-to-back champion. And what an impressive one that would be, especially with some of these more unconventional decks here this weekend. Zora's Control, not something you see a ton of players raving for attention to be called to. Orzhov Midrange and Pioneer, a deck that you probably never even heard of until this weekend.
Yeah, so, I had no idea what that was about.
Yeah,
I admit, I had not seen too much Orzhov Midrange and Pioneer. That's not something people are doing.
Yep, and so you love to see that sort of creativity and hard work paid off for all the players here. Dom's team can't put everyone into the finals, but by golly, they have half of it at least. As you see Dom thinking about what he wants to do for turn here, Malevolent Rumble was the pickup.
Yeah, a lot of great options here. I think he picked up Amulet. He's got a lot of stuff to do. The question is what matters is you see these kind of dueling one-ring setups. And I think these are the spots that for the players is some of the most fun. But as far as from a viewing standpoint, I think a lot of people would be pretty critical of these kinds of board states where it's like, okay, you have a control deck, a big mana deck, both of them kind of very, very much looking to do completely different things. But, the one ring being what the game is about on both sides of the board is maybe a little bit of a knock against your gameplay experience, as it all kind of goes down the same funnel at the end of the day. Now we'll see exactly what Dom can do, and really who can be the one ring deck. Both of them support 4 copies. We'll see. Obviously, like I said, using them different ways. For Dom, doesn't really need a critical mass, but does need to find his specific cards. And at this point, having just gotten all of his permanents Wrath of the Skies, kind of does need a critical mass. So wondering what the doctor ordered. What can he assemble? The question.
Yeah, looks like he's sizing up an Amulet of Vigor here.
Wow.
Decks like Titan are, one of the things about them are you have a lot of options available. It's important to think through them all and then execute. And that's why you see players like Dom mess up a lot less with these incredibly complex decks than most other players, because they'll take the time to think through everything and then sort of do, right? Dom clearly is sort of two minds about what he wants to do on this turn. So he's trying to figure out exactly what I want to do, and then you'll see him execute it very swiftly. That's typically how Dom likes to operate. So it looks like originally he was doing some line of the Amulet, but maybe thinking better of it now.
He wants to try to cast the Rumble. It looks like he really wants to try to actually get that cast and get that going. I don't know what the punish is necessarily, because no matter what he does, I think he's going to be able to play a blue land and hold up blue mana. So the really question is, now we're planning for 2 or 3 turns from now. Just playing Amulet, it's a cheap card. It can wait. Malevolent Rumble, a little bit more expensive and maybe a little bit more attractive to tag with counterspells as a result. So kind of prioritizing resolving that, and he does cast it.
Yep. Hitting a Aftermath Analyst and Ursaga as the targets, taking the Aftermath Analyst, a powerful ramp card and combo enabler here for this deck. We'll have to get into that if it happens here. And Dom sizing up the Otawara as well. Now has blue mana. And this is sort of, what we have available here is we can Mystical Dispute, we can consign, and if we're willing to lose the spawn, we can even make a construct here. I think that might be what Dom's head was thinking about there is, am I willing to trade the spawn for a construct if X or Y happens? Remember, it is open deck list, so Dom can think through all the permutations as Dykman takes one from the one ring and has to decide.
Yeah, I mean, you have to use your counter magic and want to make a construct as well. Both of those things have to be true before you lose the spawn. Otherwise, you actually can just tap blue on instep. Like, what are you tapping down from necessarily? I don't know, but I think it seems pretty safe. So the spawn, it's a nice option, but being able to actually get your Rumble through, cast that, start to set up for future turns, and still be able to make construct if you want to, and still have hard cast Mystical Dispute up, normal Mystical Dispute up. You have all these options in front of you. Gives you really the most information about how you want to proceed based on what Dykman's this turn looks like.
Dykman seems to have 3 mana on the mind, and it's a Narset Parter of Veils.
I love the sequencing here. I mean, you're playing as a mono green deck. You don't play your cards like this if you haven't sniffed out the counter magic. So Dykman knows it's there, holds it back, and maybe this is bait. I mean, the way he's posturing, the way Dykman's posturing, it feels like bait, but it's juicy bait. Dom's going to take it.
Yeah, Dom in an awkward position where pretty soon the Mystical Dispute can just be paid for constantly. Decides to make Dykman fight back if he's going to and wants to keep that one ring on live. Dykman still with 2 mana. Sizing up now that we know the Mystical Dispute's gone. Anything I want to do? Does have a Orum's Chant in hand. We might see that happen again. Might do something in response to Dom if he wants to sack the spawn here to do.
Yeah, still has the option to make a construct. I mean, Dykman at 11, a construct's a little bit appealing at least.
Yep. Yeah, I was going to say, be a pretty big construct as well.
Here we go. It begins.
I wonder that, so Dom can, in response, draw and try and find a Mystical Dispute, and that would counter this. It would take a lot of mana.
Yeah, it's like your whole turn, and you didn't make a. That's more appealing to me if you made a construct, because then you
Sure.
actually are getting somewhere with your turn. As it stands, I mean, you're still going to get to draw your cards. You can make constructs if you want. You can even activate Urza's Cave if that's where you want to go. So, like, I think you still have enough stuff potentially to do that. Maybe you don't care about this one. But the problem with the One Ring is you draw so many cards that you're going. It's likely Dykman finds another. This is why control decks can afford to just put this card that more or less is a 0 for 1, right? You're just like stopping their turn. Okay, cool. Like, you're down a card. That's not something that is typically played. Control decks haven't played Silence in their main deck in years past. What enables that is the One Ring. You have so many cards.
Yeah, I was gonna say the one deck that has done it is the Orim's Chant control deck of the past, right? When you were able to use a Scepter so that it wasn't down a card, you were only down the mana. What does Orim's Chant give you? It gives you time, and that's all the One Ring really asks for is time and mana. And you see, like, Dom's deck is one of the best One Ring decks because it gives you that mana immediately. We are gonna see the Urza Saga popped here. Gonna figure out exactly when to grab. Could get an amulet, could get an expedition map. Gonna go with those Amulet of Vigors that have brought Dom so much success over this last decade.
It makes me wonder if he's looking to do something this turn that is going to set him up to have a protected win next turn with the Analyst. Because, like, a lot of times, like I said, if you want to punch a Titan through and that's your plan, you're going to go for the Cavern path. But if we know he found an Analyst off of the Malevolent Rumble, if your plan is to punch that thing through, it's kind of hard to counter for the most part because, Force Negation doesn't get it, things of that nature. If your plan is to try to win with Analyst next turn, you kind of want an Amulet this turn in order to start to set things up.
Yep, and we drew the Cavern from the One Ring. We see it at the front of the hand here behind the Misty. So we have that as sort of a sneaky thing available to us.
And that makes the map much less attractive too. So that lets you get the amulet as well. And you can just have it all, have your cake and eat it too.
Yep. Mystery and Force coming down. And it looks like Dom maybe think you can channel and stuff like this. So he's just making sure where our hand size is. Looks like we are going to be moving to discard. Maybe it was 7. I thought it was 8.
I think it's 8. I think we do have to discard a card, but I mean, we have a bunch of extra lands. I'd be kind of surprised if we need all of them.
Yeah, it looks like Dom's maybe lining up. He has a Force pulled to the front, but then also flicked a Teleria West, which would be weird to me. But Dom is
Titan and Cavern.
Yeah,
I kind of have it all, huh?
Oh, with discard 2 cards. This makes more sense. Okay. So Dom was thinking what the other one is. And we're getting rid of the Aftermath Analyst. I love this because now Shifting Woodlands is a copy of it, and it can't get counterspelled. It's sort of safe in our graveyard.
Yeah, the cave can grab that, like you mentioned. So we can grab it and activate, make Analyst, and all that is counterspell resilient, and also entirely Orim's Chant resilient as well. Surprise! No spells.
Gonna see the One Ring activate here, drawing 3 cards.
Found Manamo, so we can just keep going.
Yeah, Manamo, a card we see these control decks use a lot to go over the top with the One Ring. We need to find a lot of cards. Dykman trying to figure out exactly how we can sort of lock things up. We saw in game number 1, Dom sort of knew, like, hey, I can't really win. I'm just going to concede because you have me beat from here. And, Dykman can reach those end states, but he does need to prove it. And especially when Dom's down a game, right? Dom knows, like, I'm maybe 0.001% to win, right? That last game, not worth my time, not worth my mental energy. Let's move on. If you lose now, you're out. Dom's probably not going to be giving up, especially when he wants to be the champ. He doesn't want Dykman to go back-to-back. He wants to get that Pro Tour invite and take down Theo and say, maybe I should have been a little place higher on the tier list going to this weekend.
Yeah, he manifested this. They didn't take into account the 2 buffs, the Manifestation and Birthday Boy. That's a lot of buffs. That's a lot of plot armor.
See Dom asking for cards in the hand for Dykman here. Looks to be a passing of the turn with a fetch land here. Remember, if Dom wants to activate anything, he needs to do it before he moves to discard. So this might be a moment where Dykman was saying discard. Dom saying how many cards you got. Hedge Maze is our find here. Untap with the amulet, and we're going to surveil. But in response to that surveil trigger, we're going to pop Urza's Cave to go find a land from our deck. We suspect it to be Shifting Woodlands, and Dom gets that Shifting Woodlands.
Yep. And now, like I said, we're setting up really to a spot. I don't know that we have a critical mass of mana. Like I said, this is a very new thing to the modern deck, the modern amulet deck. And I am not Dominic Harvey, so I don't know the specific mana thresholds that make it to where you can win without casting any more spells. So, like, if you get Orim's Chanted here, can we copy Analyst and win the game? I don't know. We're going to find out if all that does come to fruition. But, I mean, we are setting up to at least threaten that for the most part. And, obviously get to spend our mana as well. So, great spot for Dom. And notably, like I said, a lot of this game looks like game one, but there are some very important differences with the position of cards that I like Dom's spot a lot more now than I did in game one. And it's not just because Dykman doesn't have those two powerful War of the Spark Planeswalkers on his side of the field like he did previously.
To answer your question, Dom can win through the Orange Chant. It would take a lot. He'll need...
That's a lot of mana, right? I don't know what the mana threshold
Well, so the big thing is the addition of Lotus Field to the deck. Dom, that's how he'll sort of loop everything, and he'll generate a crazy amount of mana. And then basically we can get to a spot where we have 2 Shifting Woodlands, and we'll turn one into Dryad of the Elysian Grove. We'll turn the other one into itself, loop, 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 and then battle could kill you. So it's possible. It's just we're a little bit away from it right now, I believe. And if we had another amulet in play, we might actually be able to do it this turn, which is kind of the crazy part. That extra amulet, when they start stacking together, do go crazy. And you're seeing this is why Dom's thinking so hard right now. I can't attack. I can't play spells. I might win the game.
Yeah, I mean, I think he has the second amulet already. Might have a third. I see a lot of cards pulled in the middle there.
You just can't play them.
Yeah, can't do anything quite yet. It's got to be a frustrating experience because I mean we're only through 2 of them, and we're not even talking about scepter spots yet either. So, I don't know. Like I said, what we can do under Orange Chant, but we're getting close. Like Dykman looks to be in a great spot. Both players have 1 rings running though, and honestly, if Dom just naturally draws Lotus Field, he's got 2 of them to draw to. That's going to be a great spot as well.
Okay, we're doing it. We pull out the Dom Harvey mana token. When he won our event, he made this one of his tokens so that he can represent mana. And it looks like we're going to start doing things here, Drake. So we floated a mana from our Shifting Woodlands, a green. As our vestige to make a green as well. We're activating Woodlands. It's going to become a copy of something. Dom's going to copy Aftermath Analyst.
The face from Dykman, I love it. He's just like, okay, I mean, you can't cast spells. What can I do about this?
And Dom's like, oh no, I can't cast spells. Well, we'll see what I can do, as we are going to pop the Aftermath Analyst.
Yeah.
So what that's going to do is, I was going to say, we'll play by play this. I basically know what's going to happen here. So all lands from the graveyard are going to come back into play. They're all going to be in our untapped because of the Amulet of Vigor. We're also going to then, have all the triggers from that occur, and then we will move forward from there here. So we're getting a bunch of Urza Sagas into play. We're getting another cave. We're getting another Shifting Woodlands. So the question is, can Dom then activate Urza's Cave, go get something like a Lotus Field, then activate the Woodlands again, do the Aftermath again, and then now we're starting to generate mana, loop, 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 and we'll actually be in a good spot. It looks like Dom is a little short of that, but was able to get a bunch of lands back from the graveyard. So now in the future turns, even if we're getting chanted, we probably can present this loop.
Yeah, and that was the thing. Like the floor here is good too. Even if your plan is just activate cave or whatever, you have 3 sagas now that are just coming back to play really whenever you want. That's tough to beat, especially. I mean, Dykman has a lot of stuff to work with. He doesn't have infinite Orange Chance yet. Now Dom does have a consign. Maybe there could be a fight. There's a little bit of an equation there, but at the end of the day, now Dom is starting to assemble inevitability. He's assembling a spot where turn over turn, if we just keep playing Magic like the control decks typically want to do, I will be the winner. So now you need to find a way to win the game. And shifting that onus is a big deal. And just being able to make this play, you get the Woodland back. And so it's not even like you've invested that much. You get to just do it and accelerate your mana a bunch. A great spot for Dom.
Yep. I wonder if maybe a way that Dykman can win this game is the One Ring killing Dom. Like maybe he can stifle some triggers, fight over the Delirium somehow, right? And then go there. It looks like Dom is figuring something out here. It is important that he has Delirium in the graveyard. Now, we're going to be moving to discard here, so I'm pretty sure we're going to be able to set up Delirium.
Yeah, we can keep that going just fine. We got too many cards in hand already anyway.
Yeah, so Dom here deciding which cards to keep. Looks like the counterspells very quickly are picked. Teleria, West of Tutor, very nice as well. But has a couple extra copies of the One Ring. Going to take Echoing Deeps as a card. You might also want to discard some of these lands just so they're in the graveyard to bring back with your Aftermath Analyst. Something you want to keep in your hand. Some are fine to hit the yard. Looks like Cavern of Souls is one of those cards that Dom's going to be putting into the graveyard as of right now, along with a copy of the One Ring.
Yeah, you can get that one back at any time, right? Like you can do this Aftermath Analyst thing really at any time. So, discarding the land, totally fine. You have easy access to it for now. Not a lot of graveyard heat, I think, even in Dykman's deck. And, would he even bring it in? It's so narrow. I don't know, but he'd love to have it here if he has any. I don't even think he has any. I think he's just light on graveyard hate.
And we see this happen too, in these small fields, you can metagame, but if your metagame read is like there's not much graveyard going on, then, maybe you just skip on something like that to shore up these other matchups. Dykman took 4 from the One Ring, falls to 5. We haven't mentioned this, but technically Dykman can die to the One Ring trigger. Now,
both players, I mean, obviously that could be part of the equation. Now, both players also, we saw Dykman already do this once this tournament, can use their consigns to time walk that as well. And Orange Chant doesn't even get around that either, because you get priority in the upkeep, the trigger's already in the stack, Dom can respond. So the Orange Chant doesn't interact there. But I mean, Dykman has so much counter magic. There could be fights over that. Either way, the equation is complicated, is what I'm getting at.
Yeah, and I think Dom might be in a really good spot if Dykman goes to play another copy of the One Ring here, because we do have that consign, plenty of mana to replicate it, and then Dykman will be having to answer the One Ring. Looks like Dykman might be starting off with a Teferi Time Reveler. Says, I really hate playing Magic. I'd love to do a little Hearthstone.
Let's change the game here a little bit. And now, of course, if this card does resolve, none of Dom's blue cards work anymore. Your Mystical Speech or Consigns, you're not allowed to cast them anymore. There will be no viable targets when you go to cast these cards. So you're in a spot where Teferi does blank those, but they also don't really answer the Teferi well. So this is a big change. The War of the Spark Planeswalkers do change the dynamic of things quite a bit, and we're going to respond, it looks like.
Yeah, it looks like we're tapping 3 mana for the cave. We're going to search our deck. I assume Dom's looking for a blue land here. He has a Misty Rainforest. We might have one that's not a fetchable source, like Lotus Field, for example, as that is flicked to the front.
Yeah, Lotus Field in the front. We could get that in play. We'll be untapped thanks to Vigor, and then we can use blue mana to cast these counter spells if that's what we want to do. But again, I mean, Dykman can pay for the Dispute and still have mana left over. So but it's not clear that that's good. But taxing Dykman's mana, like I said, that's what the match was about. So it could matter.
I was going to say, I think it might. It depends, honestly, on I think how Dykman plays the turn, because let's say Dom floats blue, blue, blue. We dispute. If Dykman pays, the One Ring is going to kill us, assuming we don't have a consign, which I think he does. But then if he doesn't have the consign on that, he can't consign the Shifting Woodlands and the Aftermath Analyst, right? Dom, that is a triggered ability, I believe, on one of those effects. So we'll have to see exactly how it goes here. But it could be awkward because Dom also might not have enough blue mana to fight the next fight. And it looks like he is going to sacrifice 2 Sagas. That's going to help with the Delirium count if we weren't already there. Land and enchantment.
And it's also nice because this does advance your board as well. Getting Lotus Field gives you plus mana right away thanks to Amulet, but also gives you plus mana for future turns if you just keep doing the Aftermath Analyst tricks with the Shifting Woodland, because you're putting your lands in the yard just to get them back, and obviously Lotus Field makes a ton of mana.
Yep. Excuse me, on the other consign, it stops the ETB mill, so that won't actually stop the combo. That's my mistake.
Right.
Just realized that as I was speaking.
You'd have to replicate on all the Amulet triggers. That's really tough to do.
Yeah, that's not easy to do, let's say the least here. But Dykman doesn't pay and can move to main phase 2, where Dom will not have any floating blue mana from this Lotus Field. It's important that Dykman does say that. If he just tries to play it here in main 1, Dom has 2 blue up in the air. And it looks like we're fetching.
Fetching now. Didn't see the so we did bring the Commercial District in. Nice little value there. This must be end step. I don't think there's a lot of rush in this, right? Are we casting spells?
I think this is the end step here. Maybe we're also changing phases, and Dom wants to have the selection now before he makes any choices. But I'm pretty sure this is the end of turn. We see an Amulet Bend. All right, yeah.
I think that signals he thinks he's getting Orange Chance again. It's a card you'd love to have. Enables the combo right away. You already have one, and you clearly must not add anything. You don't think it's going to add anything to the board if you're betting it here.
Yep. Dykman figuring out what cards we want to keep here. Rich on cards. Has multiple Solitudes, multiple Consigns. But
Wraths to boot. Jeez. Yeah, I mean, he's just gotta. This is what the One Ring game states end up like, right? Both players really. It's a little bit of hyperbole, but really you could kind of generalize this to they have access to any of the cards in their deck. They've drawn so many cards that they should have whatever they want from their deck, with maybe the exception of Dom, who has a bunch of 1 and 2 ofs in his deck. Definitely true for Dykman, where all of the cards he wants, he has multiples of. So really it's just a question of how can you navigate the game where you have access to really anything in your deck you want, and make sure that you don't get the game stolen from under your clutches, because your opponent is in the same spot for the most part.
Yep. As we are going to see, it looks like, so it's a little off camera here, but it looks like Dykman's making a pile of cards like we saw Dom do for once we're going to discard. And okay, back to Dom now, and in our upkeep, we're going to Orange Chant.
Never seen this one before.
Yeah, and
Orange Jet number 3.
did you see how Dom reacted to that one versus the past? In the past, Dom always thought, and Dom said, "Yep, doesn't
Yeah, he
care."
planned for that, right? Like I said,
Yeah.
milling the amulet off that commercial district surveil, I think, is a dead giveaway that he is planning his turn around being orange chanted. It is a bonus if he is not, and so he was very much ready for that, and he's ready to go.
A little surprised to the activation here. I thought we would just go through things, maybe looking for a specific land. I'm sure Dom is a master of this deck, like we talked about, has written the Amulet Bible for free on his Twitter, over 20,000 words, talking about not only the history of the deck, but how to play and sort of what you're looking for in a lot of matchups. A great resource to the community. Dom's someone who does coverage with us and also has just, been sort of a steward of content and the game for the last couple of years now. And we love to see him succeed as well in the feature match area, as it looks like he's lining up exactly what he wants to do here. Once again, Dom's going to try and think through everything to make sure there's no small error and then execute on his combo.
Yeah, this is exactly what I'm talking about. The mana thresholds, and I mean, we saw Dom do a little bit of thinking. He's kind of walking through it right now, but the mana thresholds are things that I'm a little unfamiliar with. He has so much mana to work with. You kind of see it separated in piles, particularly like, okay, here's my Shifting Woodland mana. Here is my, whatever, activate, I assume, like Urza's Cave mana. Like these kinds of things are what's being lined up here. Now, obviously, none of his spells have text, so really the lands are the only things he's really looking at in his hand for the moment. As activated abilities do still work, and Tulare West in particular seems to be very interested in getting over. So, like, that's what I'm saying. We're talking about the ability to win without being able to either attack or cast spells. Very difficult to do, but this build of Amulet supports that. And really, Dom wouldn't even be in this game, or really, in my opinion, in this match if he didn't have access to that. So this necessary adaptation of the Amulet deck you see coming into play big here, and gonna matter a lot. And honestly, I think makes the deck, it was already hard to play. I think it takes it another level above. And this is why Dom's content is so important to consume. Otherwise, it's easy to mess up. We're gonna untap the One Ring.
Draw 6 cards. All right, let's see. There's a Force of Negation. That could be something that could potentially matter. It's 0 mana, counterspell, land, Narset. Didn't find what we were looking for. Dom has the green light to go, and let's see what Dom will be doing here.
Yeah, I mean, Dykman doing that, does he think he's dead? I mean, the counterspells don't work. None of his cards work. What's the...
There must be there's some card in Dykman's deck that he was trying to draw to. I'm unsure exactly what it'd be. I need to look at the list to see here. But Dykman, very accomplished player. We've been talking about Dom, Theo, Andrew. Dykman's someone who has lots of Magic results as well, including our winner and player of the year last year. And we're seeing Dom say Vesuva, copy the Lotus Field, and I think he's explaining to Dykman, so what's going to happen is I'm going to generate mana from this, go up mana each iteration of the loop, then I'm going to mill, go through my deck here. Echoing Deeps will also enter as a copy, because when they all come back from the graveyard, it still sees it as it enters. It's one of those weird situations. And then I'm going to eventually bounce all of your permanents, like the One Ring. I'm going to then Bossage you all of your lands, and I'm going to pass. I think is what Dom is saying, because he wasn't able to find the Dryad of the Elysian Grove. If he had found the Dryad and put it in his hand, he could have then moved to discard, and then in Dykman's upkeep done the Valakut thing we talked about. But since we didn't find the Dryad of the Elysian Grove, Dom is now going to just Bossage you everything, and then Otawara everything. And then from there, Dykman, who does play a decent number of basic lands, will only have those left to battle with.
Yeah, so I think we are going to make Dom go through this. Maybe Dykman thinks he can actually still... He has enough basics to work with. Let me get a quick...
It is also a really weird situation. So seeing the first iteration... For like me, the first time, was playing against Ryan Bellamy, is another person who's a staple in our series here. I've known Ryan since he was 12, and I believed him. But I was like, also, Ryan, I have no idea what you're talking about, man.
You're just saying words.
Yeah, yeah. Because Ryan was telling me, I was like, dog, I got to commentate stuff like this. Just do it once real quick. I believe you. And he showed me, and I was like, that's crazy.
Yeah, this is... kudos to whoever came up with this, because this is bananas. It just... I mean, Shifting Woodland, I guess, a sweet pickup from MH3. Important. I mean, every deck that's viable in Modern right now, I think, had to gotten something from MH3. And for the Amulet Titan deck, it's this nonsense. Shifting Woodland enabling some Aftermath Analyst combos. We saw some of that in Standard, now able to do it in Modern. And like you said, going to be able to find any land with Tulare West Urza's Cave, can pick up any lands that you find off Urza's Cave with bounce lands. So you have plenty of options as far as access to lands in your deck, and the lands that do matter for that purpose are things like Otawara, things like the Boseiju. You can hit every single permanent, hit every single spell, do all of those stuff, and then, eventually get to a spot where you find your Dryad of the Elysian Grove and win with Valakut on the spot that way, and don't even have to use Titan anymore. Should we rename the deck? It's not Amulet Titan anymore, right? It's just Amulet now, I guess.
Yeah, that's true. And I think one of the things that we're seeing here too is Dom sort of explained like how I have you dead multiple ways or like through everything as well, right? Because the cave will go through it, and we're also just showing, okay, I have the Boseiju. I'll get a bounce land to bounce that Otawara, and then we'll go through it here. So we're going to get a game number 3 from our players here as Dominic Harvey ties up, and this is why you didn't see, Dom concede, right? Like it looked very similar to game 1, but dramatically different post board, dramatically different with the state of the game. We're able to win it there and take ourselves to a game number 3.
Yeah, something I really wanted to highlight is like things change a lot in game 2, and Dom was, building towards that in game 1, but more or less kind of ran out of time, and the arms chance were too much. He didn't have enough mana to work with, didn't have enough time to work with. There was able to get it done and execute the very complicated combo that seems to be a game winner in front of these arms chance, and One Ring Protection is normally what it's good against, but being able to get the arms chance too is kind of crazy. That's a lot of flexibility in your deck that normally relies on Primeval Titan to win the game.
100%. And this is a thing too where we don't see this deck win as much on Magic Online as something like Boros Energy, right? There's a lot of conversation right now about Boros Energy being the deck in Modern. I personally believe that Amulet Titan's sort of up there with it, but you can't do what we just saw on Magic Online, right? Looping and going through those triggers, it just takes like 10 to 15 minutes. So if you ever have a game where, I don't know, maybe you don't have a perfect draw, you time out. And so we just see this kind of weird situation where it's like, yeah, you know what? Maybe Energy is the best deck right now, or one of the best decks. There are some decks like Titans that could be competing, but are sort of limited by that. And when you're a Modern tournament's only that, we see some weird stuff happening. But enough of that. Let's check out our player slides real quick. I want to learn more about these players here that are in our top 4. Here's Steven Dykman. Main events played this year 3. Best finish was 5th. Number of top 8's 1. We talked about this. Dykman won our champs last year, so came back this year, played a couple of events, took it a little bit easier, and has 3 Pro Tour appearances, some SCG top 8, some good finishes at Grand Prix as well. And his non-Magic take is Tom Brady is overrated. I don't know enough about football to weigh in on that.
I'll give him this. It's at least a hot take. You're talking about, it's like saying John Finkel is overrated. Like, is he? Is he? I don't know. Is he?
That's an interesting thing because, John Finkel definitely, one of the top 5 Magic players of all time, right? So it's sort of like how, like, what does that mean? Like, if let's say he's second and you call him first, is that like, technically you're right, but like, does it really matter?
Sure. Okay. Yeah. What's the baseline?
Yeah. Right. Like, I just wonder if Dykman's well actuallying me. That's all. I don't know. I don't want to get got. Dykman, he's a good player. He's going to try and beat me in this arena of ideas. Not today.
Yeah. He will. I look forward to hearing about all the ways I'm wrong.
Yeah, let's check out Dom Harvey here and his finishes. Main events played this year 6, best finish first, number top 8's 3. We saw him win back-to-back events, Drake. He's from Toronto. We don't bring this up a lot, these days, but Dom is from Canada and comes down to play these events. We had the Lord of the Rings Pro Tour top 4. He's an invitational winner when it comes to Man Traders and 3-time SCG Open winner as well. And his special talent is pile shuffling. Really wish we had quotations on that shuffling there, but that's life.
We need quotations on all that. Special talent, pile shuffling. Those weren't even piles. What are we talking about? It's all a mess. But Dom's somebody I've had a lot of experience playing with and against. He was, of course, in the Players Championship that I got to be a part of in 2019. He was on a member of the testing teams that I was a part of in a lot of that time as well. So got to play with and against Dom Harvey quite a bit in my time. And one of the things I love most about Dom is his ability to be as efficient as possible when it comes to his tournaments. He does one of 2 things at every single tournament he plays. He either loses extremely quickly, winning very, very few matches of Magic, or, as you see very commonly, and you saw this year in the Energy series, he wins it all. Those are the 2 modes. That's it. He never wastes any time with this second place stuff, never wastes any time with, I lost in the first round of top 8. He does not do that. He either loses early, so he gets to go home, gets to go eat, gets to do whatever he wants, or he brings home a trophy. And he's done a lot of that. He saw 3 open top 8s, won back-to-back events. And he claimed, he manifested, he used all of his birthday power to say he's going to win this one too. And based on his run so far, I'm led to believe him. He doesn't do top 4 exits. We have he has all the plot armor around him, but quite an end boss to get through, the MVP and last year's champion. If he wants to prove Canada is truly supreme, he has quite the Titan to get through in Steven Dykman.
Yeah, and speaking of Titan, our players are presenting their decks right now for cutting. So let's head down to a feature match area as it is time for the deciding game of our semifinals here. Modern Amulet Titan on your left from Dominic Harvey. Expect nothing different from him. On your right, Steven Dykman with Azorius Control. Innovative take here. Splashing a couple of green for a couple of cards, Prismatic Ending. We have, Cosmic Rebirth, but really a blue-white deck. And you see Dykman looking at his hand.
All right, I figured it out. Pile shuffling, it's actually a misnomer. It's referring to his decks. It's a commentary on the decks that he is shuffling.
So you would say, I like it. Yeah, Dom's saying, listen, I play piles and I shuffle. As we are going to see a Gemstone Cavern.
Yeah. Yeah, Gemstone Caverns, that was a modification here for game 3. Like I said, that's a card that only comes in on the draw. We did see some sideboard adjustments kind of in between games 2 and 3 here. And yeah, it came up. Here we go.
Yeah, and this is the big one, Vexing Bauble. You're welcome, modern players, for this one. 1 mana, you cannot if you cast a spell and no mana is spent, it is countered, and you can sacrifice a Vexing Bauble to draw a card. Surveil Land comes on down. So
you're responsible for this thing too? Is that what you're claiming?
I would say I maybe pitched it on top of Guide of Souls, and then it became its own card later. So
it really looked at Magic. It's like, you know what we need? We really just need people to play less Magic. I can't believe they play so much Magic. This is ridiculous.
I would argue that trying to stop grief makes me the good guy, but that's up to the philosophizers. We pass the turn, we'll leave the card on top of Dominic Harvey as a Manama comes down, and we're going to untap for Dom here. Only turn number 2 despite having this mana.
Vexing Bauble does stop Solitude. That actually matters a lot in this matchup. Solitude is one of the ways you can really catch Titan. Normally you think about it for the force effects and stuff like that, or just zeros if somebody's going crazy on a combo, but does actually matter for all of Dykman's free cards, Force and Solitude. Kind of a card you wouldn't really expect, but you can find it off Saga, and like I said, both those cards do come up against Amulet. That's enough hits, and of course you can draw a card with it later. Love this card from Dom, and having it on turn 1 is pretty nice off Cavern as well.
Yep. It's a big get there, and you can just cycle it away later in the game, get a little redraw happening if you need it. And one of the big things you mentioned there, the Solitude and the Force Negation, when Dykman taps out sometimes on these like turn 3s for one of these powerful Planeswalkers, he's relying on those cards to protect him, right? That's no longer the case. He can play something like Teferi, he can unsummon the Bauble, Dom might pop in a response, right? And then we don't get a card, Dom does. So a lot of awkwardness going on here. It's definitely something that it's going to make Dykman's life annoying. It's not the end of the world, but it is, worth the slot, especially in a Saga deck.
Yeah, and there's a lot that changed about the Amulet deck too to make it less awkward in your deck too. A lot of times the old Amulet decks would prioritize Teleria West as your ways to find Titan, and you would really prioritize finding your Teleria West, transmuting it, and then you'd find Summoner's Pact. Sometimes even if you were flooded on them, you would go find Pact of Negation too. Vexing Bauble would be good against those cards, so now it's bad against cards in your deck. With you kind of moving away from that and more towards Aftermath Analyst stuff, Vexing Bauble starts to hurt your deck quite a bit less. I mean, the packs it still gets. There are 3 of those in the main deck, but you only have the 1 Teleria West, right? So we're talking about 1 Teleria West, 3 packs. That's plenty. And of course, you can draw a card with it later.
Teferi comes on down. I'm going to be curious to see how Dykman wants to play this. He's going to tick it up. He wants to protect it for now. Dom decides this Vexing Bauble is not what's about. I need to redraw the card. Now that Teferi's down, I can answer that later. I don't want my mana tied up in that way. As we're going to take a little bit of a think here as Dom starts his turn with 3 mana. Very easily could go land the One Ring, one of the more powerful things to be doing in Dom's deck.
It's interesting because there's a little bit of a double pressure there, right? Cracking the Vexing Bauble would lead me to believe that he thinks it's go time. I want to try to do something this turn. But with Dykman tapped out, you would think intuitively, okay, if he's willing to tap out, he probably has something free to do. Well, maybe that's not the case if he thinks Dom is just going to play it safe and keep the Bauble around. And so it doesn't matter. He can just pass the turn. His stuff doesn't work anyway, whatever. So Dom being willing to crack it, draw a card, does potentially turn on free spells from Dykman. We see he doesn't have any, but if Dykman didn't think they worked anyway, maybe that wasn't set up. Maybe that's actually not what Dykman's working with, and Dom is going to have a window here to go and not have to worry about free spells.
Dom has a Summoner's Pact in hand. You see him lining up. It looks like we're going to start with the Amulet of Vigor, see if that resolves. Makes our Summoner Pact a lot safer of a play. Obviously, we're going to need to have 4 mana, but not too much that can go wrong in that regard as long as we have a land for a turn. Summoner's Pact, we'll see what Dom's going to search. Aftermath Analyst is a pretty powerful card here. We could see Dryad of the Elysian Grove. As another one, Arboreal Grazer is a good way to maybe sometimes go up a mana. We might see something like another Amulet, enter a Arboreal Grazer, play a bounce land, do some crazy stuff. We'll have to see what Dom wants to do, though. As Dryad of the Elysian Grove was the pickup.
Yeah, you used to see this deck, especially in amulet situations, multi-amulet situations and stuff like that. Actually go find Azusa as a way to start your mana. Dom on 0 of those this weekend. Really Dryad, the only card that enables multiple land drops. So that could be part of what's going on here. You're going to look at Dryad of the Elysian Grove, the powerful enchantment creature from Theros Beyond Death. Added quite a bit to this deck. He used to play 4 of them, now only 1. Aftermath Analyst, kind of what this deck's about, alongside the Bird Grazers you mentioned. So that one's going to be the find. Now, we do have a pack to pay for, so if we're not going to try to win this turn, we have to plan for that. It looks like he's going to get some extra lands to do so.
Yep, Dryad of the Elysian Grove getting that extra land drop. Reminder that this is how we win with Valakut earlier, as you get this into play. Now, Consign was the pickup there for Dykman. Dom can't do anything on this turn. He's forced to wait to see what Dykman wants to do. Mystic Gate.
This is tough, right? Because Teferi can just pick up the Dryad, and then you're stuck paying for a pack. Like that doesn't feel awesome. But I mean, at the end of the day, Dom might just need to accelerate his mana. This is the best way to do it, even if you're taking a turn off. Just getting that extra land that one time is plenty. And Amulet, maybe you get to deploy Dryad next turn anyway, because of the Amulet mana boost you get there.
Yep. Dykman got a new card. Looks like Narset in hand with Days Undoing Drake.
Oh, no.
We
Yeah,
can
that's, I think that doesn't come up that much against Amulet because, like I said, a lot of the times they're doing stuff in their land. So it's like, okay, you got my cards in hand, but I still have sagas going or whatever. That is not the case right now. This Days Undoing, it looks like it's going to line up to be really nice. And it is the way for Dykman to clean up the graveyard. No graveyard yet, but as far as delaying any Aftermath Analyst, Shifting Woodland shenanigans, Days Undoing is a way to do it.
Yep. Prismatic Ending seems to be the pick here for Dykman. Does have the 1 ring. If he endings, he can go after that Amulet of Vigor, and that's going to give him a lot of time. And you're seeing, yep, Dykman's like, yeah, nope, powerful 4-mana card, not what I'm about. Let's remove something here. Probably this Amulet. We'll have to see exactly how he wants to play it. Yep,
yeah, you want to move now. If you get rid of this Amulet, that shuts off Dom's really ability to do anything with his turn. Like I said before, you could really redeploy Dryad if he has a bounce land with the Amulet untapped. As soon as you remove that Amulet, that's not true, and Dom's really going to have to take the turn off, which sets up your Days Undoing.
Yep. You see Dykman only have 4 lands in hand. Sorry, only has the 4 lands, none in hand. Pardon me. It was a weird way to say that. As we were looking at maybe playing the 1 ring.
I mean, this is a prime spot for Days Undoing if we have it, right? It's like just pass, upkeep that, or sorry, draw step that, and I mean, where does the game go from there? Please don't top deck a Titan, I guess. No, you still wouldn't even find it because you don't even get a draw. You get nothing.
Yeah, it's going to put Dom on no cards in hand, just mana. Looks like Dykman might be looking for something like Lorien Revealed and finds that that's going to let him find a land, make those land drops. As Dykman is going to have 7 cards here in a second, just really wants mana. And we could see Dykman wait on the Lorien Revealed, but I do think you're right. We're probably going to end up going for it. It's just one of those weird spots where if he likes the cards in hand, he might hold on to them. But
it's just so appealing to put Dom on no cards, no graveyard. I mean, that is a spot with 2 Planeswalkers already in play where even if your 7 is all blanks, you have stuff going on still anyway, and Dom would have to top deck very well because the Shifting Woodland has no juice, nothing. It can't become anything yet.
Yep. We'll have to see. Dykman gets the island, plays the island. Looks like we're lining up our mana. The 1 ring is the other big appealing play here. It has Solitude in hand, a card that, 2 years ago was something that the Titan players could fight through but had to work really hard to do. Now sometimes they don't even care. It's like,
that's not their biggest worry anymore. There's more to worry about. I have to worry about getting orbs chanted every turn for the rest of the game and stuff or all this other stuff. And Dykman, very patient. I would have, I'm a less patient player than him. I would have snapped off that draw step Days Undoing. I don't got any self, whatever. It's clearly thinks he can fight through stuff and has, like I said, he has plenty of tools to do it. Counterspell, Solitude, the likes, everything's coming up Dykman. He can kind of do whatever he wants.
Yeah, I think this might be a spot where Dykman's like, I'm not even sure what I would want to be drawing, and maybe I like these cards enough that let's see if Dom will develop some more. And maybe I'll fight over something there. Looks like he's now lining up the Days Undoing with the Dryad on the stack. Interesting.
Well, something we know about too, and this is something he might be considering. Something we know about is an Odawara in Dom's hand. If Dom could respond to the Days of Doom with an Odawara and really actually make a meaningful impact on your board. So if you're going to try to see if Dom is willing to tap out, you can use your cards you're going to lose anyway, and potentially not get something of yours Odawara as well. So you get to have more leftovers after the Days Undoing. That could be really appealing. Again, I'm not that patient. I'm not.
I forgot the Odawara was open information. That's right. That is known, I should say. That would matter on the Narset. So that makes sense. We're rewarded there from Dykman. I missed up by myself, but Dykman not having that. That's why he's our champion. And trying to stop Dom from his declared victory, 9 months ago. And yeah, you see Dom just be like, well,
okay. Sounds good. And so that's going to happen. And Dykman chooses not to. I don't know if he had the white card to pitch Solitude as well. I imagine if he had the white card, he would have. But I think he was kind of light on white cards there.
I think this is all on the stack, because if it's not on the stack, the Dryad, you can go land.
He gets priority to play another land, and that's very bad for you. And then he can Odawara again. So yeah, you have to do it here. You're right. You're absolutely right.
Yeah, weird spot for sure. One of those moments where, in real life, we put the card on the table on Magic Online, we wouldn't be having this issue. The one time. Anyways, Dykman shuffling up 7 new cards.
I mean, for the average player, I think the average player thinks like me. They would have just snapped it off in draw step and gotten something of theirs Odawara. And Dykman, like I said, obviously not the average player. This is a Magic playing juggernaut of the NRG series, and not going to make that mistake. So as a result, kind of have to parse through the intricacies of what's going on. Is fresh 7 coming for Dykman, big old zip coming for Dom.
Yeah, and it's definitely not bad, right? We went from 5 cards in hand to 7, but we drew a couple of Solitudes lands and the 1 ring, and so we're gonna use this Lorien Reveal to get another land out of our deck, and nothing too crazy, but also Dykman doesn't have anything too crazy to really hit in the first place, so.
Yeah, get to guarantee more land drops, and the Dryad obviously has got to resolve, because whatever, I can answer that on my own time. You're not going to do anything with it. You have no mana, you have no Valakuts, you have no shenanigans, so you have lands and a Dryad. So I mean, Dom understands his spot is precarious, but there are still good draw steps. He's at the critical mana threshold of 6 mana, so Titan has text. If Dykman's 7 is bad and things don't get worse for you in the next turn cycle, you have a chance, but things are beginning to look very, 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 very bleak.
Yep, as we are going to see, the Meticulous Archive added to hand. Dom taps it, and Dykman draws for the turn. Force Negation is the pickup. That's a big one. I think.
Yep. Force plus Solitude is a tough force to fight through. Having 1, you can usually beat, just drawing the right sequence of cards that don't line up with their stuff. When he has both, that's a problem.
Yeah. We see Flood Strand the land for the turn, fetch from Steven. Gonna grab something. Plains is the pick. Curious to see if he wants to, Solitude now, hold up, what exactly what's going to happen. And you see Dom just thinking about, where did it all go wrong?
I don't know that everything necessarily had to go wrong. I think both players played fine. The cards didn't line up necessarily. That's the potential with the Amulet, right? You talk about what's the downside of Amulet. Well, 1, it's hard. 2, you have some really weird hands that don't line up well necessarily against what your opponent's got going on. Now, it's hard for the opponent too, because they have to figure out how to line their cards up. But Dykman, being as talented as he is, he's going to figure it out. And sometimes that's going to open you up to, okay, well, the sequence of cards I drew, I had the powerful Gemstone Caverns, I had Vexing, blah, blah, and all these things. Well, I just didn't line up to where I could punch a win before we get to this board state that Dykman we saw build towards in game 1 for a victory. Both of these Planeswalkers plus the 1 ring. That was his victory state kind of in the main deck game. And then the Cyber game couldn't assemble it. Now has assembled it here, and I have to imagine this is bleak. And yeah, Dom's gonna take a draw step. Wasn't a good one. It was 1 draw step, and Dom is eliminated from the top 4.
Yep, Steven Dykman back in our finals. Our winner last year said, Dom, I heard you wanted my throne. Well, if you come at the king, you best not miss. And Dom, unfortunately, did miss top 4. Great place to finish, but a little shy of what he wanted. We'll have to see, can Steven Dykman take down Theo? The other narrative all weekend has been Theo's the player everyone wants to dodge, right? Garrett said, hey, my advantage being MVP, I don't play against Theo. That's not the matchup for me. Well, Dykman is going to have to beat Theo if he wants to get back to the Pro Tour, be our back-to-back champion, and get that $10,000.
Yeah, inspiring run for both players. Theo, obviously, one of the juggernauts of the series this year, has done a great job crushing. Dykman had a much quieter year this year, so there was a big question mark over his head. Is he going to come with the same fire he had in 2023 as far as being MVP and champion? Well, the answer is yes. And so now we have a finals of, kind of past and present, and well, maybe not so past as far as Dykman goes. But before we get to that, we're going to have to take a quick break as those players do get ready to play best of 3 matches. We'll be back here in just a moment.